Welcome to Game Changer Live, brought to you by Connor's Coaching. If you like what we bring today, please log into YouTube, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. That really helps us grow. We really appreciate it. Game Changer is created to inspire a community with topics of positivity, coaching, personal development, emotional intelligence, business-to-business services, applied practical neuroscience, leadership development, workplace culture, and engagement, and more. We bring it authentic and we bring it live so that you know exactly who you would be working with if you're interested in our services. We go live every Wednesday at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time, and guests join us on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month to talk about their business. Together, we're better and inspire the best version of ourselves. So today we're joined by Daniel Prince. Daniel Prince is a play and purpose coach who helps people rediscover the aliveness through play and clarity of purpose from bedroom to boardroom. He has 20 years of experience in corporate marketing as an innovator and a well-loved project and team leader. He's got facilitation experience, training, and leadership positions. And I met him through the International Coaching Federation, my local chapter here in Oregon, where he serves on the board. So we are really honored to have you today, Daniel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Daniel, it's my pleasure. I love your show and I love your name.
Thank you. It's a good name, isn't it? So Daniel, tell us in your own words about you as a coach.
I'd say I like to say I'm a coach, as you mentioned. I'm a mentor, I'm a trainer, facilitator, and not a bad dancer. As you mentioned, I like helping people who are stuck in any part of their life to create more clarity around who they are, who they're not, so that they can have more peace of mind and more meaning in life and more clarity, and then also more playful aliveness.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the energy that you bring too. I think I resonated with it almost immediately through our first meeting when you were introducing ICF Oregon to me.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So tell me about your ideal client.
Yeah, as I was saying, people whose lives, maybe they've checked all the boxes. They've gotten to a spot in their lives where they've created what they've wanted, they thought they wanted, and maybe it even looks good on paper or even great, and sometimes even envious, like mine did at some point. And then they find like inside that they are dissatisfied, that they're stuck, they're maybe even scared that maybe there really has no meaning after, kind of these outside successes. So I like helping people really getting clear on who they are, and then also who they're not. We have all these voices in our heads that tell us, I say, pretty little, not so pretty, not so little lies. Help people like then really understand that and get clarity of purpose so that they can really move forward and flow. So I work with a variety. I work with both men and women. I work with people, kind of all ages, but often like 30s to 60s. And also I support managers as well who want to have better communication skills, have more conflict resolution, have more clarity around themselves and their leadership, and also to have more fun and innovation and play at work.
You do talk a lot about play as well as purpose. So let's start with play. Why play?
I say why. I say why not? When for a long time in my life, I heard the gotta grow up, gotta be serious, stop playing around, and I believed that for a while. And I've always been a really positive, luckily been a really positive person and want to be silly and still also a really hard worker. And I started just, I'd say, dumbing down one way or dulling down kind of my spark and my energy to be more serious, come across like, the serious, type A sort of leader, and just found that I was just getting less and less happy in life because I just felt like I was not being myself. And when I started, I got support, I got coaching. I've done a number of workshops and classes that really saw bringing out my unique play in the world really supported me to be more myself, but also supported other people and gave them permission to have more fun. And the more I looked at play I love neuroscience. I love how our brains work and how they totally don't work and keep us stuck based on fear. So the more I started to really understand how our brains work, I saw that play was really beneficial to our well-being. And I could go on and on, but I really saw play supported me to be more myself and bring out my aliveness, and also really all the benefits it has on how our brains work. So I just said, absolutely, I want to support more people to bring play in their lives, from the
Yeah,
bedroom to the
I'll have
boardroom.
I'll have more of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know from our conversations that play can be defined differently by different people. You and I have both very different
yeah.
definitions of what play looks like. So, how would we broadly define play?
I would say it's broadly, it's at some level it's unique to each of us. There's a lot of stigmas around play, so people have, I'd say, maybe a flawed definition of play in some ways. I look at play as possibility and aliveness.
Mm.
And then I like to quote, kind of the differences is like Oxford Dictionary says that it's an engaging activity for enjoyment, but it has no serious or practical purpose. And I'm like, well, I don't believe that. And then when we start looking
Neurologically,
at,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah, then we
neurologically
start,
speaking, there is a plenty of purpose to play. It's one of the biggest ways to learn.
yeah, I'd say absolutely. And when I look at neuroscience and all the studies, and let's say the pool of evidence around play and really what it is for your brain is how we're learning about our environment and learning to explore and adapt to change. It's like, we see kids and puppies and young things playing and falling down and exploring and rough and tumble. And we call it, oh, there's playing, but really it's our brains testing the environment, seeing what works through different scenarios. I try this one thing, this happens. I'm like, cool. I try another thing, this happens. I put on this role, this happens. So it's how we learn about our environment and adapt to change. And we need that from beginning of our lives all the way to the end.
The things that I think I've seen from your LinkedIn posts, and you should follow Daniel on LinkedIn, by the way, audience, you guys, um, is that idea of running across a sprinkler in the lawn while you're walking down the pathway, and your mindset is what really defines play in that moment. Do you look at it as an opportunity to jump through the water, or do you look at it as an opportunity to get wet that you have to avoid it?
Yeah, I was just trying to remember a quote that just came to mind that some people um, can dance in the rain, other people just get wet, and that's all in our minds. It's like how we, everything in life is coming through us as data, and we're making up meaning about it all the time based on our past, based on shoulds, based on all these filters and what we think is right and wrong, for better or worse. And mine is unique to me, yours is unique to you. So it's like, how do we choose, like you said, have a mindset around being more curious about everything in the world, curious about what's going on, and look at it through the eyes of play and wonder and novelty and openness, and I say, like, possibility. So yeah, I love that sprinkler. I saw people playing in my sprinkler, and some people just like ran away from it. Other people were like ducked down, giggled, and ran through it. It was so fun. But it totally gave me a perspective on people's mindset at the time.
Yeah. So we kind of touched a little bit on the benefits of play. Are there other benefits that you want to bring up?
Oh man, plays. Obviously it's fun, but from another perspective, it doesn't even need to be fun. As I was saying, our brains really look at play as when we're exploring something novel and something with some focus. We can get in this flow state that is, we lose time, but also our brains see this as an opportunity to learn. So it starts dumping in what I would say, they say performance enhancing, neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin, endorphins into our brain to actually speed up our brain, to get us to think faster, for us to remember things more, for us to get in this playful mindset in our brain that gets turned on, let's say. And so that continues after that play activity as well. So, sometimes we'll have like ahas when we're been focused for a while and exploring something, and then go away and analogy of them standing in the shower and all of a sudden, bing, or a light bulb goes off, sort of ideas. That's our brains continuing to be playing with different ideas and outcomes. And I like to say, we wouldn't have all of our culture and science and medicine if people hadn't played with ideas. So it doesn't necessarily need to be fun. It's more of us looking outside of our box, looking at possibility, looking at what else might be out there. And often we don't play because we think we know what's right and wrong. We really want to, in our society, it's around, getting it right. Or we have this some of our time versus value. So we want to be productive. And that just narrows and narrows and narrows to it's either this way or that way. So I support people to look at play from, I say, the bedroom to the boardroom, but at one level, I mean, from the moment you wake up, how can I be more curious? How can I look at life with more open eyes and more opportunity? All the way throughout your whole day. And this is not just your personal life, but also throughout work. We need, all this playful idea creates this innovation. Comes from, doing something silly, doing something no one expected. So I think play, benefits us, in all parts of our lives, and it supports, let's say, really brain function. One of my favorite quotes from one of the best or the top play professors is that the opposite of play is not work, it's actually depression. So from a neurobiological perspective, they say play actually supports our well-being and throughout our entire lives. And as we've talked about, neuroplasticity, which means that we just are more open and our brains are more active, and that they've shown studies now that it supports depression or maybe antidepressant at some level, and things like Parkinson's and other people that actually have more play in their lives can actually support actually brain function in so many different ways.
Yeah. And what comes to my mind, while you're talking about this is really this idea of living in the present and living in the now state that helps you get into flow. That really, that seems to be play for a lot of people, playing with data, for example, if you do a lot of data analysis, or really thinking, really just being in the moment and being in the present. And that it speaks to me as a coach. I don't know. I'm pretty sure a lot of coaches feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So often we're we say we're in a comfort zone, or we're going through life almost at a subconscious sort of just cruise level, throughout our day. So much of our day is repetition in actions, we get up, we go to work, we eat, we see our friends, we do that sort of thing. It's kind of day in, day out. We just get in this kind of cruise mode where we're not always really present. We're okay, I'm getting to the next thing, or I'm thinking about the past, or I just got to get through my day. So play has us, pause and be present. And when we're present, I think we're able to see our environment, and there's so much more possibility when we're present versus I'm just following what I think is right. I'm following the cruise control. That's where people get stuck in life. They're they come and look for support from coaches or from books, from other things, because they're not being present. I'd say at some level they're I'm stuck because I'm stuck in my pattern. I'm stuck in my programming. So play, just helps all of us get present, get in that flow, look at possibility.
When you think about some of the negative comments that you've received about people wanting to incorporate more play, but also feeling that urge to focus on paying the bills, they might say things like, don't we need to work to make a living? We have a reality of needing to pay the bills, and that stops us from playing. What do you say to that kind of criticism?
I would say is, like with a lot of things, is it 100% true? Or is this just an interpretation? like a lot of things in our heads. I'm like, is it true or is it made up in my head? And I honor and respect people's perspective, and I also then try and give them an idea of like, when isn't a good time to play. Like, we get up in the morning and we choose what clothes we're going to put on, and that's based on, well, who do I want to be today? Like, do I want to be professional looking? Am I going to be working? Am I going to be hanging out with friends? Do I want to look sexy? Do I want to do what? So we're playing with ideas, we're playing with roles from the moment we wake up. And I support first time managers and managers overall, leaders, to bring play into their businesses. And there's opportunity to play throughout our entire day. And it's really a mindset of looking for more possibility versus like thinking I know the right way to do something or how things are going to go, how the conversation is going to go. I'm looking to be more open. And when I'm more open, I see more possibility. I attract more because my energy is more open as well. So for the people that say, oh, we got to be serious to work, I mean, there's a whole perspective that you can do it the hard way. You've got to work hard to make it. And that's a trauma response. I say it doesn't have to be hard. I mean, there's lots of bad things in the world right now, and there has always been. We've got lots of burnout, got lots of loss, there's a lot of grieving and people just barely surviving. And I think there's still opportunity to look. It's not toxic positivity, like look on the bright side, but at some level it is. I'm like, is there some way that you can be a little more open today in any part of your life? Even if it's like 1% change, every day, at the end of a year is like 365% change. So yeah, I like supporting people. I like hearing that and then saying, is that true? Is there another possibility? Could you be open to a little bit more in some ways? And that's your brain just being, playing with things.
Yeah, I really think about how the hormones override each other, right? Like cortisol overrides a lot of those hormones and makes you feel stressed out so that you do something about it. Those are uncomfortable states to exist in. And yet so much of our society is just driven around cortisol junkies, being stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, and not being optimized, because the brain actually works like 90% better when it has adrenaline kind of lessened a little bit, higher
Yeah.
testosterone instead, and higher dopamine and higher oxytocin and other kinds of hormones that are optimizers. So absolutely, um, that really resonates as true with me. When when you look at play at work, and because play isn't just defined as playing games and wasting time, right? What are some ways that managers can incorporate play into work? What does that look like?
I'd say it is a mindset, and I would say it shouldn't be like a requirement. And the idea that that often, here's a cliche that we have foosball and ping pong, and we're going to have tournaments in our lunchroom, and that's when we're going to play, and everyone has to do it because this competition is good and how we
Mandatory
bond.
play.
I'm like, yeah, mandatory. We must play now, and later we will work. That if you don't agree with that, then maybe you've been in an experience where you're like repelled by that. Because there's so many different ways to play. And like I said, it's a mindset. So from a manager perspective, it's like, how can you support people to be more creative? How can you support people to take more risk? How do you create and then an environment where you're, one way they talk about is fast failing, so that you're innovating, you're trying new things all the time that are maybe lower risk, so you can actually learn what worked, maybe learn what didn't work, and then iterate from that, versus there's one way and we're going to focus on that and get stuck in that place. But how do you support people to bring also their unique magic, their play sort of personality? And there's lots of different ways that people play. Like I mentioned Stuart Brown before, then one of the top play positive psychologist, talks about, there's competitive play, which we're all familiar with, sports, etc. But then there's also people that like to be, ribald and silly, and there's ones called the joker. So they like just, the classic sort of jester play is one way. It's also people that, if we're looking at how what play looks like in our minds, there's people that are called the kinesthetic sort of players. They like to walk. They like physical games like board games and like yoga. And I'm part of that as well. I love to dance. I think that's play. It's playing in my body, playing on the dance floor. There's also a play type called like the director, who people like to organize like meetings or events or cooking class. People just like to organize things, and they get joy from that, and they get energy from that, and their brain gets stimulated from that. It's also people who like to collect things, like the classic stamp collector, a book collector, or people like to get energy and play with that. And this, then at work, in agencies, they're all full of a lot of like artists and creators. It's another way to play, or like storytellers. So there's like, I just kind of listed off, there's like 8 that Stuart talks about, but then there's lots of different ways. So how, we do assessments often at work, like strength finders is one way, and other ones. But I would say if you understood people's play type and then allowed them to bring some of the play to their roles and to your team, you'd have much more energy and engagement and innovation if everyone can kind of bring their own playful magic to roles. So it's a top-down perspective, but also it's from a bottoms up. It's like, how do you actually bring more of your play to yourself? I mean, bring more of your playful self to work. So
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. I mean, the big hot topic right now in terms of engagement is the silent quitting, which is where people are actively disengaged at work and they purposefully choose that behavior because they don't feel like that there's anything in it for them. And if you think about that as opposed to, let's say you have an employee who loves to organize and is very playful with that. If you delegate throwing an office party to that person, how much more are you going to get out of them? They're going to feel engaged. They're going to feel welcome. They're going to feel playful at work. And you're giving them that engagement opportunity. You're not forcing it on them. That just seems like an
yeah,
authentic way to engage your employees.
absolutely. And speaking to like engagement, we have the highest levels of burnout we've ever had. I think it was between 60 and 80%, depending on where you're at. And what really that is people are disengaged.
Yeah.
And what that also creates is levels of mental illness. Actually, we have anxiety, we have worry, we have grieving that's going on, and at work. So that's really prevalent. And work related health illness is like the number one illness that actually there is. So how do you support people to have a better experience at work, have more engagement, bring more of their creativity, their uniqueness? And that is through play, and it's not always fun and games, as you said. It's like, allowing people to do that. I just was in this cohort for, if you know Marcus Buckingham, he's the Strength Finders lead founder of that whole evaluation, and he has a new book called Love and Work. And you're like, what? Who loves work, really? Or how do you put those two together? And he said there's a Mayo Clinic study that showed that if you can bring like 20% of yourself in a way that you love to your job, that is higher than most average people. So you need 20% to really be loving something about your job, and everything else, can flow along from there. So how do you support your employees and yourself to find something that is uniquely love, and that you can bring unique sort of energy and playfulness to it, and that can expand to be positive throughout your whole role. And by modeling this also, you're giving people more permission to play, to be themselves, to bring their unique energy to work.
You kind of talk about play as an antidote to a lot of different parts of life. So can you expand on that for our audience who might not be familiar with what you mean there?
Yeah. So antidote is like, a fix, or like, I'm not a medical profession. So some way that it's going to heal. And so, often in life we get stuck. And I like to talk about, another neuroscience perspective is fear. Um, our brains, people talk about being worried, and I say, hey, that's natural because our brains are set up with a natural, completely beneficial negative bias. And what that means is like our brains are always looking for the worst possible outcome to keep us alive. Because really, the brain's number one function is to keep us alive and survive, not to be risky and being innovative and do change. So it's totally normal and natural to have fear and have worry and have anxiety at some levels. And it's also, once we know that, then we can look at, well, are these fears really real? They'll look at potential outcomes. So yes, don't put your hand in the fire because we know it's hot. But what else is there? If I look at fear as really the acronym of like false evidence appearing real, so FEAR, then we're like, okay, these worries are really just made up. And from that perspective, then how do I get unstuck and how do I get out of fear is looking at how can I be more curious about this? How can I check in to see, is this, is there another way to look at this, another perspective, another possibility? And can I play with an idea? Can I try something out? Can I get unstuck by just getting into action a tiny bit? Because often we get stuck, then we have no new information, and then we just swirl in that fear. So how can I lower the risk of change a little bit by just playing with something? So I say play is an antidote to most anything in life. Don't quote me as a medical professional, but when we're stuck, like how can we play? How can we add play to anything to create change, create possibility, and ideally the outcome and have a little more fun, energy, and liveliness as well. So yeah, I say it's an antidote to everything that keeps us stuck and unhappy in life.
What about purpose? Where does purpose come into play?
Mhm. Um, I would say where it comes into, well, when I talk about purpose, it's, there's so many different ways to look at purpose. People get stuck and they're like, I don't know what to do next. So some people say, hey, help me figure out what to do next. And I say, do you have, and I guess another way they look at it is like, I kind of lack meaning in life and I lack direction. So purpose can be looked at lots of different ways. The Japanese talk about it, ikigai. It's the reason for being, or like as we would say, like the reason for even getting out of bed. So,
Yeah, it's
like,
the juxtaposition of what are you meant to do, what are you good at, and what do you like to do, and what do people need, and that's your ikigai.
well, that's yeah. We've seen lots of those. What are the Venn diagrams
Yeah,
and
Venn
multiple things,
diagram.
and the sweet spot. But for me, I look at purpose similar like that, and I use those kind of analogies to help people understand. But also, I look at purpose as both a way of being in the world.
Yeah.
If I'm aligned in a flow with my core positive sort of essence, then that flow and that direction, what I'm doing and what my heart has me doing, my spirit has me doing, that's purpose at some level. And people talk about, well, my purpose is to be the best mom or to save the world. And I'm like, those are great, goals, but really purpose is both something that you can be doing in the moment as part of your being, but also something that inspires you and like a touchstone and North Star. So I say it's a way of being, and also it's unattainable and attainable.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, it has been a joy to have you on our show today. If you are watching us today, thank you so much for being here. And since you stuck around this long, just want to remind you to subscribe and leave a like and a comment to this video about what you enjoyed most about the episode today. And if you want to know more about Daniel Prince, information about him is in the description for this video. For this video. Um, and we are live next week again, 3:30 on Wednesday. That's Pacific Standard Time, and we're going to be talking about journaling. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel.